Queen Camilla stood at the grand window of Windsor Castle, watching the morning mist roll across the perfectly manicured gardens. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the morning tea, steam rising from the delicate china cup. She had no idea that this peaceful morning would become the beginning of the most devastating day of her royal life. King Charles entered the private sitting room with heavy footsteps, his face bearing an expression she had never seen before. The man who had loved her through decades of scandal and public scrutiny now looked at her with cold determination. Behind him walked his private secretary, carrying a leather folder that seemed to weigh more than its physical contents suggested. "Camilla, we need to discuss something of utmost importance," Charles said, his voice lacking its usual warmth. She set down her teacup with shaking hands, sensing that whatever was about to happen would change everything forever. The private secretary placed the folder on the mahogany table and stepped back respectfully. Charles opened it slowly, revealing documents that would soon shatter the foundation of Camilla's world. His eyes, which had once looked at her with such tenderness, now held a steely resolve that made her heart race with fear. "There have been serious allegations brought to my attention," Charles began, his words measured and deliberate. "Allegations concerning your family's conduct and their exploitation of their royal connections." Camilla felt the blood drain from her face as she realized the gravity of what was unfolding. For months, whispers had circulated through the corridors of power about her relatives. Her son Tom Parker Bowles had been photographed at exclusive events, allegedly using his royal connections to secure lucrative business deals. Her daughter Laura Lopes had been accused of accepting expensive gifts from foreign dignitaries, seeking favorable treatment from the crown. Even her sister Annabelle Elliott, who had been given interior design contracts for royal properties, was now under scrutiny for potential conflicts of interest. "Charles, surely we can discuss this privately," Camilla pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. "These are my children, my family. Whatever mistakes they may have made, they don't deserve to be cast aside like this." But the king's expression remained unmoved. The weight of the crown and the responsibility to protect the monarchy's reputation had hardened his heart against the woman he had once defied the world to marry. "The decision has been made, Camilla. The royal household will no longer have any official or unofficial association with any member of your family, effective immediately." The words hit her like physical blows. She stumbled backward, gripping the arm of her chair for support. "You cannot mean this, Charles. After everything we've been through together, after all the years of standing by each other's side through every storm, you would abandon my family based on allegations?" Charles turned away from her, unable to meet her desperate gaze. "It's not abandonment, Camilla. It's preservation of the crown. The monarchy must remain above reproach, and your family's actions have compromised that position." His voice carried the authority of a king, but she could hear the pain beneath the royal decree. The private secretary cleared his throat softly. "Your Majesty, the press releases have been prepared. The severance will be announced within the hour." Camilla felt her world crumbling as she realized this wasn't a discussion or negotiation. The decision had already been made, announced, and executed without her input or consent. "My grandchildren," she whispered, thinking of Tom's children and Laura's family. "They're innocent in all of this. How can you punish them for their parents' alleged mistakes?" Her maternal instincts fought against the royal protocol that was tearing her family apart. Charles finally turned back to face her, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. "The children will be provided for discreetly, but they cannot have any public association with the royal family. The risk is too great." Camilla sank into the chair, her regal composure finally breaking. Tears began to flow down her cheeks as the reality of her situation became clear. She was being forced to choose between her family and her position as queen, but the choice had already been made for her. The crown had claimed another victim in its relentless pursuit of preservation. The morning that had begun with such peaceful promise had become a nightmare from which she might never wake. As she sat in the ornate room surrounded by centuries of royal history, Camilla realized that she was about to become part of that history in the most tragic way possible. The woman who had fought so hard to find her place in the royal family was now watching helplessly as that same family was systematically dismantled before her eyes. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10 times, marking not just the hour, but the beginning of the end of life as she had known it. In just a few hours, the world would know that the king had cut all ties with his queen's family, but they would never know the price that decision had cost the woman who wore the crown. The news broke across every television screen, newspaper headline, and social media platform within hours. "Royal family severs all ties with Queen Camilla's relatives," screamed the headlines, accompanied by photographs of her children and sister looking shocked and devastated outside their homes, surrounded by aggressive paparazzi. Camilla sat in her private chambers, watching the coverage unfold with growing horror. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from her family members, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. What could she possibly say to comfort them when she herself felt so utterly powerless and betrayed? Tom called 17 times before finally leaving a voicemail that made her heart break. "Mom, please call me back. The reporters are camping outside my house. My children are asking why they can't see their grandmother anymore. What am I supposed to tell them? What did we do wrong?" His voice cracked with emotion and confusion. Laura's message was equally devastating. "Mother, Harry's school friends are already asking him why his family is in trouble with the king. He's only 8 years old. How do I explain to him that his grandfather, the king, doesn't want anything to do with us anymore?" The pain in her daughter's voice was almost unbearable. Even Annabelle, usually so composed and practical, sounded lost and frightened. "Camilla, I've lost all my contracts, 20 years of work, gone overnight. But that's not what hurts the most. What hurts is that Charles didn't even have the courtesy to warn us this was coming. We're family, or at least I thought we were." Each message felt like another nail in the coffin of her happiness. Camilla had spent years trying to blend her family with royal life, carefully navigating the complex protocols and expectations. She had thought she had succeeded in creating a bridge between her old life and her new role as queen. Now that bridge was burning, and she was trapped on one side while her family suffered on the other. A soft knock at her door interrupted her anguish. "Your Majesty, His Majesty requests your presence in the green drawing room," announced her lady-in-waiting with obvious discomfort. Even the staff seemed to sense the tension that had engulfed the palace. Camilla composed herself as best she could, wiping away her tears and straightening her posture. She had learned long ago that showing weakness in the royal household was a luxury she could rarely afford. But as she walked through the familiar corridors of the palace, she felt like a stranger in her own home. Charles was standing by the fireplace when she entered, still wearing the same stern expression that had haunted her all day. Several senior advisors were present, their faces grave and professional. The formality of the setting made it clear that this was not a conversation between husband and wife, but between king and queen. "Camilla, I wanted to personally inform you of the additional measures we're implementing," Charles began, consulting a document in his hands. "All royal protection for your family members will be withdrawn immediately. Their access to royal events, even private ones, is permanently revoked, and any business ventures they're involved in that have received royal patronage or endorsement will be thoroughly investigated." The words felt like physical blows. "Charles, you're talking about my children as if they're criminals. These are the same people who have supported us through every difficult moment of our marriage. Tom walked me down the aisle when we remarried. Laura helped plan our wedding reception. How can you erase all of that history so easily? One of the advisors stepped forward, a thin man with cold eyes who had never approved of Camilla's elevation to queen. Your Majesty, with respect, the integrity of the crown supersedes personal relationships. The public trust in the monarchy has been compromised, and decisive action is required to restore it. Camilla turned to face the advisor directly, her eyes blazing with a fury she rarely allowed others to see. Don't lecture me about the crown's integrity, sir. I've sacrificed more for this institution than you could possibly understand. I've endured decades of public humiliation, death threats, and character assassination, all for the privilege of serving the same crown you claim to protect. Charles raised his hand for silence, but Camilla wasn't finished. I've watched my children grow up under constant scrutiny, never able to live normal lives because of their connection to me. I've seen my grandchildren have to change schools because of media harassment. And now you want me to stand by silently while you destroy what's left of my family's dignity. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Charles looked at his wife with a mixture of pain and resolve. Camilla, you knew when you married me that duty would sometimes require difficult choices. This is one of those times. The survival of the monarchy depends on our ability to make hard decisions, even when they hurt the people we love. Don't hide behind duty, Charles, Camilla replied, her voice shaking with emotion. This isn't about duty. This is about politics and public perception. You're sacrificing my family on the altar of your approval ratings. Her words hung in the air like an accusation that no one in the room could deny. The king's chief advisor cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should allow their majesties to discuss this privately, he suggested, sensing the personal nature of the confrontation that was unfolding. But Charles shook his head. No, this concerns the entire royal household. Everyone here needs to understand that these decisions, while difficult, are final and non-negotiable. His use of royal protocol to distance himself from his wife was perhaps the most hurtful thing he had done yet. Camilla felt something break inside her at that moment. The man she had loved enough to weather decades of scandal and public hatred was now hiding behind his crown to avoid taking responsibility for destroying her family. She realized that she was no longer speaking to Charles, her husband of nearly 20 years. She was facing King Charles III, and the king was choosing the crown over the woman who had helped him reach the throne. As she looked around the room at the faces of advisors and courtiers who had never truly accepted her, Camilla understood that she was completely alone. The family that had supported her through every crisis was now forbidden to her, and the royal family she had married into was treating her like a liability to be managed rather than a partner to be cherished. 3 days had passed since the announcement, and Camilla had barely left her private quarters. The weight of her isolation pressed down on her like a physical force. She had not spoken to Charles since their confrontation in the green drawing room, and he had made no effort to reach out to her. The distance between them felt like an ocean that grew wider with each passing hour. The morning brought another cruel reminder of her new reality. Her private secretary informed her that she was expected to attend a state function that evening, where she would be required to smile and play the part of the devoted queen while her family remained in exile. The irony was not lost on her that she was expected to represent family values while her own family had been cast out. As she prepared for what felt like a performance rather than a royal duty, Camilla caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed aged by decades in just a few days. Her eyes, once bright with purpose and determination, now held a hollow sadness that no amount of makeup could conceal. The state dinner was held in the palace's most magnificent ballroom, filled with dignitaries, politicians, and members of high society. Camilla entered on Charles's arm, playing her role perfectly, despite the turmoil in her heart. But as the evening progressed, she found herself surrounded by people who spoke to her with polite deference while whispering behind her back about her family's disgrace. During the dinner, a foreign ambassador made what he thought was polite conversation by asking about her children. "Your Majesty, I haven't seen your son Tom at recent events. I hope he's well?" The innocent question felt like a dagger to her heart, and she struggled to maintain her composure as she gave a diplomatic non-answer about family privacy. Charles noticed her distress but made no move to help or comfort her. The man who had once been her greatest supporter now treated her like a political ally rather than the woman he had pledged to love and cherish. Their public appearance of unity was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated performance for the benefit of the crown. After the dinner, Camilla walked alone through the palace gardens, seeking solace in the moonlit paths where she had once found peace. The beauty of the surroundings felt mocking now, a reminder of all the privileges she enjoyed while her family suffered the consequences of her position. She was startled by footsteps behind her and turned to see the captain of the royal guard approaching. Captain Williams had served the royal family for 15 years and had always treated her with genuine respect and kindness. His presence now felt like a small comfort in her ocean of loneliness. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion," he said quietly. "But I wanted you to know that many of us in the Guard remember how your family welcomed us during difficult times. Your son Tom personally helped one of my men when his father was dying. Your daughter Laura organized care packages for our families during the pandemic. We don't forget such kindness." His words brought fresh tears to Camilla's eyes. "Thank you, Captain Williams. That means more to me than you could know. But I fear kindness is a luxury the crown can no longer afford." Her voice cracked with the weight of her accumulated grief and disappointment. The captain looked around to ensure they were alone before speaking again. "Ma'am, if I may speak freely, some of us believe that loyalty should work both ways. Your family showed loyalty to the crown when it mattered most. Perhaps the crown should remember that." His subtle criticism of the king's decision was a risk to his career, but his moral conviction outweighed his professional caution. Camilla felt a moment of warmth in the cold isolation that had consumed her. "You're a good man, Captain. Take care that your conscience doesn't cost you your position. I've learned that the crown demands sacrifices from all of us, and it rarely asks our permission first." As she returned to her chambers, Camilla made a decision that had been growing in her heart since the crisis began. She sat at her writing desk and began composing a letter that would shock the world and change the course of royal history forever. Her hand was steady as she wrote words that came from the deepest part of her soul. The next morning, Charles found the letter on his private breakfast table. As he read it, his face grew pale and his hands began to tremble. The letter was Camilla's resignation from all royal duties and her intention to join her family in their exile from royal life. She would retain the title of queen, but would no longer perform any functions or accept any privileges associated with that position. "She's chosen them over the crown," Charles whispered to himself, finally understanding the full cost of his decision. The woman who had stood by him through every challenge, who had transformed from the most hated woman in Britain to a respected queen, was walking away rather than abandon her family. In her letter, Camilla had written, "I once believed that love could conquer all obstacles, including the demands of duty. I have learned that I was only half right. Love can conquer obstacles, but only when it is mutual and unconditional. I choose to stand with the people who have never wavered in their love for me, even if it means leaving behind the title I fought so hard to earn with dignity." The royal staff began to whisper as news of the Queen's decision spread through the palace. Captain Williams and his men stood a little straighter, knowing that integrity had triumphed over politics, even if the victory came at an enormous personal cost. As Camilla packed her personal belongings, she felt something she hadn't experienced in days: peace. She was trading a crown for her family's love. And for the first time since the crisis began, she knew she was making the right choice. The woman who had entered the royal family as an outsider was leaving as someone who understood that some things matter more than titles, and that true royalty comes from the courage to choose love over power. The king had cut ties with her family, but in doing so he had lost the one person who had made his reign meaningful. As Camilla walked toward the palace exit for the last time as an active member of the royal household, she carried herself with more dignity than any crown could ever provide.